Hello everyone, this is Uncle Yeow and the Singapore Story. Now, recently at the National Day rally, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong actually talked about HDB allocation, how it's going to be improved, it's going to be made fairer, and then also it's going to be made affordable. Now today, Uncle Yeow would like to share with you the story of HDB, or public housing in Singapore. Okay, first up, in 1959, Singapore gained full self-government, but not independence. Now, what does full self-government mean? It means that we take care of everything except internal affairs and also foreign relations. Those still were under the British. Now, that year, 1959, we had the first general election and the PAP won a landslide victory, and thereby Lee Kuan Yew became our first founding prime minister. Now, during that time, in the 50s and 60s, housing was a major problem in Singapore. How so? People were staying in wooden shacks, rundown, atap houses, and then some in Chinatown, they were living in rooms all crammed up together. No proper amenities, no electricity, no water, no toilets. In fact, for most, a toilet is a hole you dig outside. So you have to be very careful, especially at night when you use the toilet. Now, 1960, that was the year when the PAP government set up HDB, which is our Housing Development Board. Now, who chairs that board? It is actually Lim Kim San. All right, he was the minister in charge of national development. So he chaired HDB, and from 1960 to 1965, within 5 years, the HDB actually built more than 50,000 new flats in Singapore. Now compare that to the British times, 10 years before. It was under what is called SIT. SIT means Singapore Improvement Trust. Nowadays we know as SIT flats. Now some of these flats are still around, but now they have been taken over by the HDB, and their leases are probably only maybe 30 years, 40 at the most. So contrast the difference. SIT flats built over the last 10 years from 1947 to 1959, only 20,000 flats. So less than 2,000 a year. Whereas HDB from 1960 to 1965, they built more than 50,000 flats, which means that it is 10,000 flats a year. That's how much improvement we have made. Now in the initial years, a lot of people refused to move to HDB flats because they don't like high-rise living. They wanted to be grounded. So one major significant event that changes all that is actually in 1961, there was a major fire in Tiong Bahru, known as the Bukit Ho Swee fire, in which 3,000 homes were destroyed, 16,000 people were displaced and became homeless. So from there on, people have got no choice but to accept HDB flats, and they start to move into HDB flats. That's how HDB flats in Singapore started. Now, if you look at the history of our HDB flats, today, there are actually more than 1 million flats being built. And 85% of Singaporeans actually live in HDB flats, like those you see behind me, all right? Different generation. The one nearest is actually built in the 1980s. And the beauty of that is that some of these are actually jumbo flats. That means it's actually a combination of 3 rooms and 4 rooms. And then the 3 blocks behind is one of the iconic ones, and that is actually 2 rooms and 3 rooms. 2 rooms meaning studio apartments for seniors. Okay, now those were actually built in the year 2000. And last but not least, you can see on my right over here, now these flats are newer flats. They've just got MOP, all right, which is the minimum period of occupation. So just 5 years and slightly more. So that you see the different flats. Now in Singapore, our public housing has now actually become and widely acknowledged as the best public housing in the world. If you look at, for example, the iconic Pinnacle at Duxton, which is in Tanjong Pagar, 50-story high. That is actually the world's highest public housing. So public housing in Singapore, to a lot of foreigners, when they come, they were actually amazed. Oh, these private condos? In actual fact, we tell them no, these are actually government-built flats. And one of the important thing is government has encouraged Singaporeans all to own their own flats, home ownership scheme, which is very, very important because Lee Kuan Yew once said, if you want our sons to defend Singapore by serving NS, they must own a stake in our country. And the best stake to own is actually to own your own homes, as in a HDB flats. So that is the reason why more than 85% stay in HDB flats, and out of the 85%, 90% actually own, or rather they buy the flats and not rent it. Not like in most other countries where people rent. When you rent the flat, it is not your own, you won't take care of it. You won't have any interest to improve on it. So that is the difference. Now another major difference is that if you look at Singapore flats, actually in Singapore, in terms of population density, all right, we are probably one of the densest population in the world. Number one is actually Monaco. Monaco, 1 square kilometers, you have about 18,000 people. Singapore ranks second. Singapore has a population density of about 8,000 per square kilometer. That's how dense we are. Compared to even Hong Kong. Hong Kong has only got about 7,000 per square kilometer. But you can feel the difference as if like Hong Kong is a lot more crowded than Singapore. Why? This comes down to our urban planning, all right, our public housing planning. Now, the person responsible right from the beginning was actually a person by the name of Liu Taike, all right. He's an architect. He's one of the CEOs of HDB in the beginning. He's a master planner. And when they plan HDB towns, all right, they make each precinct so full of amenities that it is actually self-contained, self-sufficient. And not only that, if you look at Singapore, one of the unique things about our HDB flat is on the ground floor, it is always left vacant. We call it the void deck. Now this is important. By leaving the ground floor vacant, we actually have got a lot more accessibility in between blocks. You don't have to go around the blocks. You can go under the blocks. And all these void decks are actually used for multi-purpose. It can be for weddings, it can be for funerals, it can be for party, it can be for celebration, whatever. So in terms of planning, Singapore has got one of the best urban planning. And if you look at it, more important, if you stay in HDB flat, you don't have to worry about the weather, whether it's the sun or the rain. Why? Because we have all these covered linkway that will take us all the way to the bus stop. For example, for me, if I were to come back, if I reach the MRT station, I'm not worried about getting wet. Because when I get on the bus to my house, after that, it is all covered linkway to my unit. So this is something quite unique in terms of the Singapore public housing experience. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a better understanding of what public housing in Singapore is all about, and then why it is acclaimed to be the best public housing in the world. With that, this is Uncle Yeow signing off, saying thank you very much. All right, happy National Day. Thank you.